The Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources will come to order. We're meeting today to hear testimony on H.R. 1937, introduced by Representative Amadei, the National Strategic and Critical Minerals Production Act of 2015. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and ranking member and the vice chairman and a designee of the ranking member. This will allow us to hear from our witnesses sooner and help members keep to their schedules. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for my opening statement. Today, the subcommittee is meeting to discuss H.R. 1937, the National Strategic and Critical Minerals Production Act of 2015 that was introduced on Wednesday, April 22nd by Congressman Mark Amadei and 37 original co-sponsors. The bill currently has 45 co-sponsors, including myself. The legislation requires the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture to more efficiently develop domestic sources of the minerals and mineral materials of strategic and critical importance to the United States' economic and national security and manufacturing competitiveness. Earlier versions of this bill passed the House in both the 112th and 113th Congresses by wide margins. H.R. 4402 passed on July 12, 2012, by a bipartisan vote of 256 yeas to 160 nays, and H.R. 761 passed on September 18, 2013, with bipartisan support of 246 to 178, and as part of H.R. 4, the Jobs for America Act on September 18, 2014, with bipartisan support of 253 to 163. The legislation addresses a significant problem hindering domestic production of solid mineral resources, which is the prolonged permitting timelines of 7 to 10 years to obtain the necessary permits to build a mine. In some cases that we will hear about today, the time required to obtain a permit can be almost 20 years. In comparison, mine projects in Canada and Australia can obtain the necessary permits in 2 to 3 years. Critics of the legislation have raised concerns about the broad definition of strategic and critical minerals in the bill. The definition was written broadly to capture the diversity of the nation's mineral endowment. This includes rare earth minerals that were featured in a 60-minute special in March of this year. Last year, at an oversight hearing on supply and demand of critical minerals, the minority witness, Dr. Eric Peterson with the Center for Advanced Energy Studies at the Idaho National Laboratory, was asked whether lead was a critical mineral. He replied, Criticality is in the eye of the beholder. If it's needed for your process, then yes, it is critical. Now let's take a look at copper, a mineral commodity the U.S. produces and has significant reserves and resources of, yet we still import 31% of what our society needs. It's also a mineral that is crucial for renewable energy and alternative fueled vehicles. And if you take a look at slide 1, you'll see the information behind saying that. You can see from this slide that a hybrid vehicle requires twice as much copper as a vehicle that runs on gasoline. At 165 pounds of copper per vehicle, the electric car requires almost 3 times as much. Demand for copper is projected to outstrip supply sometime after 2017, with a deficit increasing to 10 million tons by 2028. And you can see that on slide 2. The third slide illustrates the problem we're here to discuss today, long permitting timelines. Currently, the average timeline from discovery to production is 20 years for large copper deposits. Worldwide, there are not enough large copper prospects in the pipeline to address the supply shortfall that is projected for the near future. One might ask how long permitting timelines affect the economics of a given deposit and a company's ability to maximize the quantity of the resource they're able to recover. A study commissioned by the National Mining Association released this morning found that a typical mining project in the United States loses more than 1/3 of its value as a result of the delays in obtaining the various permits required for mine construction and production. The costs and increased risk associated with these delays can cut the expected value of a mine in half and in some cases make the project uneconomic. This drives investors to fund overseas projects, even in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, as you know, a very unstable country. Mr. Amadei's legislation goes a long way to address this problem and is a first step in addressing the nation's troublesome dependence on foreign sources of mineral resources. I want to thank the witnesses for being here and look forward to hearing from them today. In a moment, I'm going to recognize the ranking member for an opening statement. In the meantime, I'm going to hand the gavel over to one of the fine members of our committee, Colonel Paul Cook of California, and at this point recognize the ranking member for his statement.